welcome back to the Sports Gossip Girls podcast. I'm Madyson. Hannah and Isabella could not make it again, but I'm super stoked to have New York Giants NFL Nation reporter Jordan Raanan joining me today. Mr. Raanan, thank you so much for coming on.
No, mister. That's the deal here, all right? Jordan.
Okay.
Jordan. That when you say mister, then you feel really old, okay? That's like the next level old. I don't want to get there just yet.
That's my father always says, like, when my friends call him Mister, they're like, no.
Yeah, I never really understood it, but now I kind of understood it. When we emailed back and forth and you wrote Mister, I was like, oh my God, I'm like at that age now, like where, it's kind of scary for sure.
So my first question for you is, what sports did you grow up playing or watching, and when did you realize you wanted to pursue a career in sports?
I pretty much played every sport growing up, I think. It was much less specialized in general. So I played baseball, I played basketball, I played soccer in high school. I played football when I was young, a little bit when I was younger. I was a skinny kid though. I think I graduated high school. I was 5'11", 145.
Wow.
So yeah, I was definitely a toothpick. So and then eventually I played baseball, basketball, soccer in high school. And then I guess soccer that was my best sport. So I ended up playing that and I guess ending in high school. But yeah, and then I don't know, I always wanted to be in sports. When I was growing up, the WFAN was a big thing. Like that was the only sports radio station. So Mike and the Mad Dog was like the show. And I pretty much grew up on Mike and the Mad Dog. The Knicks right here, when they used to be a good team back in the day. They were trying to track down Michael Jordan. And then I just looked at that and I said, wow, they talk about sports for 5 hours. I think it was 5 hours at the time. 5 hours a day. I want to do that. I want to do something. And so I didn't really know how I wanted to get there. So I don't know. I end up going in a bunch of different directions until I finally end up here where I'm at and covering the NFL. And really, originally, when I was probably around college age, my favorite sports consuming were probably baseball and college basketball. So it's like, I want to be a reporter and cover those sports. Then you learn, football's the biggest. It's the lifestyle wise, it's the best to cover because it's the most 9 to 5, maybe, I guess, that you can figure. So, but eventually it's good to do a little bit of everything. And I think I did. I probably covered every sport. I covered college basketball. I covered the NBA, covered a little hockey, football, you name it. I pretty much covered. You start and you cover some high school stuff. So it's all experience, and you want to do as many platforms as possible and as many sports as possible. And then you could kind of narrow it down as you move along.
Yeah. So what was your first job in sports, and how does that compare to where you're at now?
Well, I guess my first job in sports was probably, I guess if it's an internship, was when I was in college. I interned at the NBC station in Washington, D.C. I went to Maryland. Oh. So it was like a 20-minute drive to D.C. from, College Park. So there was a show, and like Bruce Beck has a show on Sunday night. What's it called? Sports Final. Is it Sports Final? Yeah.
Yes.
So Bruce has his Sunday night show. It was a guy down in Maryland, in D.C. His name was George Michaels. And so it was called the George Michaels Sports Machine. It was a national version of that, a Sunday night show at like 11:30 at night, whatever, on the NBC station. And it broadcast all these NBC stations. And I was an intern there, basically like a production assistant for that show. And that kind of was my first jump into it and like, okay, this is good experience. And actually a funny story was while I was there, they tell me, okay, they're doing this round table with these 3 guys. They did it pretty often. It was George Michaels, and then the other 2 guys were Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. So it was like predated almost what there was for, pardon the interruption. They used to do, some spots, or I guess it might even be a regular show with the NBC station down there. And I had to like call them up and like arrange for them to come in or whatever it was. I was just, the lower level guy logging tape. Like I would have to watch games and log when big plays, what time stuff happened on the reel, so that they knew where to go to get the highlights. So like, let's say there was an amazing dunk or steal and dunk, and it was at 1932 of the game, right? I would have to write and log it down, and then they would have the log, and it would be highlighted, and they would go back and find that highlight.
So you definitely
and so that's
that.
yeah. I would assume there's a much better method these days than having some kids sit there and just log film. And actually, I did the same thing for CBS football at one point after college as like a part-time job.
It sounds complicated.
Yeah, not that complicated. You're sitting there watching a game and logging when stuff happens. So there's worse things, I guess.
Yeah. Given obviously the circumstances we're in right now with the pandemic, what were some of the challenges you faced this season?
The biggest thing is not having access to the locker room, in my opinion, or access face-to-face with people. I'm a big proponent of, I'm not the best planner in the world. So most of the time, pre-2020, you go to work, I might not even have an idea. And if you hang around and you talk to enough people, something falls in, it seems to fall in your lap. Like, as long as you're that, to me, that's the number one key to being successful, is being there. Yeah. So by being around the locker room, I could just be having a general conversation with someone, and they could say something to me, and then boom, it like sparks an idea, or they tell you something. And it just, to not have that this year in general was a difficult thing for me, because that's a big part of how I got content. Some people are able to pre-plan, and they'll have their story, their template basically pre-written, and ask questions where they'll push the person in that direction so that they get the exact quote that they want. So they can basically just plug it into their story. That's not me, and I would never want to be that person anyway. I think that's a terrible way to operate. But so to me, not having that interaction to create those relationships. Look, I don't even know what I never met James Bradbury face-to-face, Blake Martinez face-to-face. Like, these guys are people that I would, in another world, in another year, I would know them well. Like, we would be able to face-to-face know each other, have a conversation. They maybe could trust me, because when you're there and able to have conversations with them, that's how you build trust. And and I tell people this all the time, this is a total relationship business, everything about it. Be able to get any information, whether it's from players, coaches, agents, general managers, whoever. It's all about having those relationships.
Yeah, it's so hard now. I mean, at least it seems hard.
It definitely is. It's a different world. So you have to find ways to work around it. You have to really, really rest on the relationships that you that pre-existed all this, craziness.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to the pre-pandemic days, what would you say is your favorite part about your job, and what's the most challenging part?
My favorite part of the job is when I look at it in a big picture. I'm not saving lives. I'm not doing anything that's important. In the big picture, I'm watching and covering football for a living. So yeah, when you look at the big picture, I mean, there's worse things to do. Now, I guess I could be doing something more wholesome, and helping people. But the flip side of it is, this is entertainment. This is all entertainment. It's an entertainment business. So we're helping people be entertained. And like I told you before, I was always into sports. When I'm in school, I said, okay, wait a minute. I got to find something that's in sports. How do I do this? And that's the best part of it. The fact that this is what I'm working. I call this a job. Some people watch sports for fun. I get to do it for a living.
Yeah.
So that to me is the best part of it. The hardest part is getting the information. Nothing's easy. You have to sort of decipher. People don't naturally tell you the truth in this business. People who go up there, Bill Belichick, and I'm not picking on Bill Belichick, this is every coach. They go up there on the podium and they say they're playing the Jaguars this year. They were the worst team in the NFL. Mm-hmm. They're playing the Jaguars. They go up to the podium on Wednesday of each week, and they tell you how good the Jaguars are. Okay, the Jaguars went 1-15. They were bad. They stink. Everybody knows it. And then they sit here and they lie to your face, and they tell you how great they were. This is a really good team. Yeah, okay. We know they're not a good team. Nobody believes that. But yet you have to sit there and basically stomach it. And your job basically is to sit there and decipher what the truth is, what they're willing to tell you, and what isn't. And then the gaps in between, you have to go dig and find out what the truth is. So that's the most difficult part because not everyone is genuine to you. I think one of my best qualities, and this doesn't just apply to, and it helps me in my job, but I'm very good. I think, and maybe my head's too big, but I think I'm good at right away, like first impression. I can tell when somebody is full of shit and when somebody is being genuine with me, and I know that right away. And I know that if I think you're full of crap, usually that sticks in my head forever when I know that person, and I'm hesitant to trust them. And then when I find myself coming around because they're likable and they're nice to you, that's when I get burned. That's when I find myself getting burned because I always trust that initial impression on those kind of things.
I feel you. What is your favorite memory working for the Giants so far? I mean, okay, I'm going to phrase this differently. What is your favorite memory reporting for the Giants so far?
Yeah, I would say the Odell catch, Giants specific, was outrageous. That really pops to my head first. I mean, you usually just sit there in a press box and you're not allowed to cheer. You're usually quiet. And I think when that happened, it was so spectacular, so outrageous that I was like, oh my God. And you're like, you're one of those, you jump up, you're like, holy kid, you can't really believe what you're saying. And I wasn't cheering. I was just so in shock with what I saw at the moment. Yeah. And obviously that's an iconic moment. That was just such a big thing for him and just in general. I mean, that's one of the top catches in NFL history, probably. Yeah. You know, if you make a list of 5-10 greatest catches, that's going to be on there. That's how ridiculous it was. And then of course it started the stardom of Odell. It really reached it just spiraled into crazy levels. Yeah. So to me, that was awesome. The best moment I was at as a fan, I was at the Yankees Game 7 against the Red Sox when Aaron Boone, who's now the manager, hit the walk-off home run. That was great as a fan. But as a reporter, the best part of covering the NFL was being at that Super Bowl where the Seahawks decided not to run the ball and they threw an interception in the end zone. Malcolm Butler, the Marshawn Lynch Seahawks teams, which was, I guess, I don't know, probably like 6 years or so now. Yeah, something like that. So covering that game was that ending was really, really something. Now on the Giants, and I say all this, you're like, oh, how does he not say the Super Bowls? I wasn't there for either of the Super Bowls. I came to cover the Giants in 2013. Oh, right after. So they won in 2007. They win again in 2011. 2012, they're okay. 2013, they're bad. Yeah. They start off 0-6, I believe it was. That was when I came. They were already 0-6. They were already on a decline. So I came there already on a decline. And really the only good year they've had since was 2016, where they make the playoffs, but they lose in the playoffs to the Packers. So nothing really outrageous in that season. That was like super, it was a good season, but it wasn't anything like, all-time memorable. So that's why my favorite thing as a Giant goes back to a single play rather than something bigger than that.
Yeah, and there was the whole boat thing, and everyone thought they jinxed it.
The boat thing, the McAdoo Eli benching thing. Yeah. Those are kind of like the seminal moments of me covering the Giants, but those are like, okay, crazy, shit hits the fan type moments.
Yeah. Hopefully there are better games and times ahead for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So who do you enjoy interviewing more, players or coaches?
It's weird because when I first started, right, I was covering sports in Philadelphia. I used to be more contemporary of the players, right? I was younger. So I'm 24, 25. I can relate to the players. There was players older than me. So probably used to be the players. The older you get, now you can relate more with the coaches. Like Joe Judge is younger than me, for God's sakes. Ben McAdoo was my contemporary. He was my age. He's right around the same age as me. So I think it used to be the players, and then over the years, it's probably transformed to the coaches because you like to have even just forget football's scale. You want to be able to have relationships and conversations on a grander scale than that.
Yeah.
So you're just able to shoot the shit with people, and I'm obviously more relatable now to the coaches, I think, than I am the players. But I mean, it really depends what you're looking for. It really depends what you're trying to do. I mean, I love talking to the older players too, especially the guys that I know from like the beginning, like Chris Snee and Justin Tuck, Victor Cruz, those kind of guys, because you kind of can go back down memory lane with them, and that's always fun too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm saying for sure, and I'm not a reporter, but I can too.
You can imagine,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Talking to players now, I mean, it's a totally different generation of people, of players in general. So maybe I'm just getting old and jaded, but it's harder for me to relate to some of these guys. They do things that I just don't even understand.
Yeah, also like social media, I feel like has changed players a lot too.
Yeah, they don't need you quite as much. So it does change the dynamic between the two, right? They're like, well, why do I need you until they need you?
Yeah.
That's sort of how it works these days. They don't understand the concept of most guys really don't understand the concept of the purpose that the media serves, that it's a promotional aspect of the game for the league, for the team. It helps grow their brand. Players just look at it, hey, what do I need you for? I have Twitter. I have Instagram. I have whatever social platform that they want to lean on. I don't need you.
Yeah, they don't get it.
Until they do need you.
Yeah. So moving on to current football talk, I guess. What were your thoughts on Joe Judge's first season coaching the Giants?
It was successful. I mean, to a degree, I should say. It was successful in the fact that Joe Judge, his primary goal was this. His primary goal was to create a foundation, right, and build a culture. And winning games would have to be secondary because they didn't have the pieces to really do it. So do I think he built a foundation and developed a culture? I do. I do think he was successful in that bit. Now, do they need to get a ton better? Do they need better players? Do they need more talent? Absolutely. So I think you had to like what you've seen so far in regards to Joe Judge, the way he carries himself, the way he's able to relate to the players, get his point across to not only the players, but also his own coaches. I think that part of it is all positive. So whether they went 4-12, 6-10, 8-8, I'm not sure that in the big picture was the most important thing from this year. Now, we could sit here and say, well, now it's been 3 years. They've been terrible for 3 years. They're not going to have a winning record. I understand. But it's not fair to hold that part of it against Joe Judge. Yeah. The mistakes of the past aren't on him. He's not responsible for them, winning 4 and 5 games the previous 2 seasons. Yes. His first season is 6-10. That's what's on his record. Now, the goal is to build next year 8-8. That would be pretty good. Get more talent. The year after that, continue adding talent, build something, right? Because they're in a rebuild, regardless of what anyone wants to tell you publicly. Trust me, this team knows it. They're in the midst of a rebuild. Yeah. They're moving forward. And the goal should be 2 years down the line, if Joe Judge's team is 6-10 again, yeah, then he didn't do his job. But in the meantime, it was at least, I think, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and building that chemistry was amazing to see.
Yeah, the only problem is chemistry sometimes only lasts. How many of those guys are going to be back? How many guys change? So you're losing 20, 25, 30 guys, whatever the number is. Yeah. Every year it turns over so much, you kind of almost have to rebuild it. That's why you want to have the foundation and the culture set and the key players there so that they can then bring it and take it and hold it, pass it down and make sure that regardless of who they plug in there, that's set, that's not going to change. And I think that's what I'm talking about of what he was trying to establish this year.
Yeah, they know Joe Judge doesn't play games. So I don't know if you're allowed to really answer this one, given like your job, but do you think that Daniel Jones is the answer? Do you think he's the franchise quarterback?
Oh yeah, I can answer that. I'm allowed to opine on Giants topics for sure. I really can't give you a definitive answer at this point, though. That's the thing on Daniel Jones. Like, here's what I'll say about Daniel Jones. You see, and then Giants feel this way too. You see things that you're like, he could be pretty good. He could be a good quarterback. He might be, he's going to be a good quality starting quarterback in this league. And then you see things where you're like, man, that's going to keep him from really taking it to the next level. He just doesn't. When everything breaks down, there seems to be a panic. It doesn't. His pocket presence is just lacking at times. So I think he could be a good quarterback. Do I think he's going to be a top? Do I think he'd be a franchise quarterback? It depends on your definition. I think he could be a top 10 or 15 quarterback. Do I see him being a top 10 quarterback? There's where I still have my doubts. And if I had to bet against it, I probably would. But let's see how this year goes. I think if he was, though, I wouldn't be stunned. Like, I think he has an opportunity to be a good quarterback in this league. Is he ever going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league? I think I could pretty definitively say probably not.
Yeah. It depends on, I don't know.
He's going to need the right pieces around him.
Yeah.
And he's going to need to make that next step and really this year in particular. Like, if you don't do it by year 3, the likelihood is it's probably not going to happen. But he's already a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. I feel confident about that.
Yeah.
He's there's about 10 teams that usually don't have a real starting quarterback. They won't be in that 10-team group. They're at least in we have a good enough starting quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, it's hard to say because we don't know what the other teams will do. But if you were Dave Gettleman, who would you take in the first round of the draft?
Yeah, give me there's 3 top receivers. So that's, to me, okay, if any of those guys are there, those guys it would be an easy one, right? Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Jamar Chase. So if any of those 3 guys are there when they pick at 11, or if they have to move up a couple spots, I don't know if they have the capital to do that. That's not ideal for them. Yeah. But that would be a great way to go. I'm a little hesitant when you talk about the tight end that some people are predicting, Kyle Pitts, the guy from Florida. Maybe a cornerback. This isn't a great draft for edge rushers, which what the Giants desperately need. So, I mean, I would prefer if in an ideal world you tell me one of those wide receivers there, that would be my choice.
Yeah.
If not, I don't really know. That would be tough because the draft doesn't necessarily align with their biggest needs this year.
Yeah.
Aside from wide receiver, which has some really good players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want them to take Smith, but they probably won't be able to.
He's a little guy, though. You think about it, they'd be small. They could use a bigger receiver. I know none of those guys, I guess, are really big, but it would be pretty small.
Yeah, true. I didn't even think about that. So what advice would you give to a young person, such as myself, who wants to become a sports reporter?
Keep doing what you're doing. I mean, by doing this kind of stuff, this is great experience. I mean, you're going to learn by messing up. You're going to learn by failing. You're going to learn by just doing stuff and do as much stuff as possible. Don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be just sports. You should try doing news. You should experience it. You should do different platforms, radio, TV, podcasting, whatever. I don't know what I missed there. Website, writing.
Yeah, right.
It's all good. It's all good experience to have. It's all good to have in the toolbox because the reality is, it's only going to keep going in this direction. There's no all right, you're a writer. Okay. You're on radio. No, you have to be able to do multiple things. My job basically entails radio, TV, writing, the podcasting. So if you're not able to do most of this stuff or all of it, even editing, back end stuff of Photoshop and graphic arts and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is valuable. I mean, it's all valuable. So anything on social, your ability to work and design stuff on social and create content. It's all valuable. So the more you can do, the better. Just keep getting experience, as many jobs, as many opportunities as possible. Take advantage of that. And so that would be my opinion, because that's kind of what I did. I did a lot of different things, and I kind of grinded my way up, job to job to job to job. You meet people here doing this, you meet people here doing that. And like I said, it's a relationship business. That doesn't just apply for gaining information, that applies for being able to get jobs. Like, that's how you get jobs. If you just think you could apply for these jobs that are posted online, I think you're gravely mistaken, because then it's you versus 10,000 other people. The hiring person already has somebody in mind because somebody recommended them to him, or he knows somebody from a previous stuff or through a friend, and you basically have zero chance of getting that job.
Yeah, that's why I love building connections. Plus, I'm young and I already have like so many connections, so I'm happy about that.
Well, then you're heading in the right direction, because that's what that doesn't just apply for this business too. That pretty much applies for every business.
Yeah, true. So, what are your Super Bowl predictions?
I'm not going to go against Patrick Mahomes right now. Patrick Mahomes, to me, is the best player in the NFL. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is Tom Brady, maybe even better right now than Tom Brady in his prime. That's how good he is, and how amazing he's been the last 3 years. If you think about it, he has 3 years as a starter. He won a Super Bowl. He won an MVP. He could win his second Super Bowl in 3 years as a starter. And the other year, they actually should have made the Super Bowl and beat Brady and the Patriots, but I believe it was it Frank Clark? Or no, Dee Ford. Dee Ford jumped off sides 2 years ago in the AFC Championship on a play where I think Tom Brady threw an interception or was 4 down. It ended the game. The Chiefs were celebrating, except that he was off sides on the play. The Patriots ended up winning that game. So that's how close he was to making 3 Super Bowls in 3 years, with an MVP, possibly winning 2 Super Bowls. I mean, he's playing out of his mind right now. And Tom Brady's great, but this isn't Tom Brady in his prime.
Yeah.
Like, Tom Brady in his prime is better than the Tom Brady we're seeing now. He's still pretty darn good. Greatest quarterback of all time, greatest player of all time. 10 Super Bowls is insane. But this year, still give me Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I don't even know. I just hate like betting against Tom Brady, but then I don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes. It's like, I don't know.
Well, that's why it's a Super Bowl, because they're two good teams. Yep. That's why they're both there.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I guess those are all the questions I have for today. Thank you so much for coming on. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
You're welcome. Thank you too for having me. And I would say I give you a lot of credit, because you're doing the right things and you're heading in the right direction. The fact that you're taking the steps to making this happen and doing this, that shows your initiative and your desire to be successful. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye. Stay safe and healthy.
All right. Thanks for having me.